Mama said don't talk to strangers. That's okay. We'll do it for you. Welcome to the Bar Talk Podcast, where we talk to interesting people doing interesting shit.
Glasses too. Yeah,
It makes it authentic. It's a grown man tea party.
That's right. That's right. Cool.
It's been a while since I've done a little tea party, Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do it every.
Nice to see you, buddy.
I do it every day.
Yeah.
I had a
That's
tea party
awesome.
on the weekend with my daughter.
Did you?
There you go.
She's 3.
Yeah, she's 3.
Yeah, and you're British, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So
I'll try not to trash on the British too much on the.
Oh no, feel
no,
free.
we're going to.
That's all right.
Yeah.
There's a sordid history with tea and
Oh, I
British.
know. That's what I'm hoping to get into. Or hope
History
Ben
is
will.
history. We don't need to
You might-
pull any punches. It's
Colonizers.
It's a good thing he's got a red light on him because you won't see the shades as he goes more and more.
Oh, he's not on the camera. It's only us, so we can embarrass him all we want, Phil.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
You're the tea expert.
I'm the tea guy. Yeah.
The tea guy.
Been in it for a while.
Yeah. So you own the tell the folks about your company.
Yeah. So my shop is World Tea House. We're
Yeah.
downtown Halifax on Argyle Street.
Right on.
In amongst all bars, restaurants, and theaters. So
Yeah.
it's just me.
Yeah. Just
Right?
you.
Just me and a whole
The
bunch
tea
of
guy.
partiers. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I mean, we party in our own right.
Yeah.
Started it officially in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
We opened the brick and mortar 2010. And have been going just strong ever since. We've
14 years now.
14 years.
Yeah. Through a pandemic.
Through
Keeping-
many things.
Yeah.
I mean, the pandemic was kind of not the hardest thing we went through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to share?
Sure. Yeah. So 2010 opened up. We had a good 2010, your first year is never great. And we opened in July. So, we only really had half a year to kind of get our feet under us.
Right.
Did it mostly myself, didn't have a lot of staff. So just kind of just trying to figure out what I was doing at that point when it comes to like being a retailer. I knew I loved tea and I had a passion for it, had a lot of knowledge, but to transfer that into money sometimes is difficult when you're doing what you love as an income, as your, it's tough. So 2011, 2012, we were really on the rise. We were, wasn't a lot of tea companies around. No one really doing what I was doing when it comes to organic, ethically sourced, fair trade, or teas from 20 different countries. Like we import a lot from a lot of countries. There's a lot of logistics behind it, and I was still figuring all that out. Mm-hmm. And then 2013 hit, and the convention center build started happening next door. They broke ground 2013, and that was 2 years of just earthquakes in our shop. We're just like shaking our floors. We still have cracks, cracks in our floor.
Blasting down there, right?
Blasting 5 stories down, like that big parking garage, like right next door to us. So that was a big project, big undertaking. Took out a lot of small businesses on those blocks. Well, some of them were taken out just by the fact that the convention center took up 2 blocks over and 2 blocks up. Yeah. So, one of that block was an empty pit where the Chronicle Herald building used to be, but then, other businesses kind of took the relocated or just closed.
And like some really historic places, like the Seahorse.
The Seahorse.
Seahorse been there since the 40s?
Yeah. That's across the street on Argyle, but I mean they Victor moved them out. There was a lot of businesses that just didn't survive that build for various reasons. Some of them because they literally shook the restaurants apart. Like I know Lil from the Wooden Monkey had huge issues with her property the next block over. I guess 2 blocks then, but 1 block now. Just hard times. And then after that kind of got underway. It was supposed to be 2 years. Turned into more of a 4-year build. I opened a second store in Sunnyside Mall in Bedford, Nova Scotia, and that colossally failed. That was I quickly learned that we weren't mall people.
No. Different kind of people.
Yeah, I mean some people thrive in the mall setting where you have, concrete hours and walk traffic and all that stuff, where we really like to do our own things. We like to have groups in, we like to have artists, we like to have very public space, very community-driven business, where a mall setting doesn't really go with that kind of
totally
flow.
different vibes.
Very different vibes. So that was an undertaking that I thought would be an expansion that turned out to be completely
Wow.
the opposite. As we all know in business, it doesn't, bright ideas sometimes don't
That's true.
come into fruition.
That happens.
So after that kind of fiasco, at the end of the convention center build, we had the Argyle Street project that dug up the entire block for what was supposed to be from April to June, that turned out to be from June until almost Christmas.
Yeah.
And we're talking 6 feet down and building to building. So of course my shop was inaccessible for a lot of that period of time. Construction would block people from coming down the street, even though they were supposed to leave walkways. And there was a big problem with that project. They've learned since. They've done better at doing Spring Garden Road.
Yeah, we had a very similar experience with the original roof out in Digby, because we do very well in the summers, really struggle in the winter. And then one summer, of course, construction season, they put a rotary in between my restaurant and town. So it's a 45-minute wait. No one's going to wait 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, we lost a lot of money that summer.
Yeah. Especially
And
not
that
here. In Halifax, we're used to it. It's traffic, right? But
Yeah. Oh, people don't take 45 minutes to go 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers, right? So that was the reason we opened this place in Kingston, was because I was really struggling. And, what does a serial entrepreneur do when you're losing? You double down.
That's exactly how you do.
That's exactly how you do, like a real idiot.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a smart move, but a lucky move, because now we had the Kingston restaurant, and then a few months after that, COVID happened.
Right.
So there was no people in a tourist town for 2 years.
Right.
But a military town,
Yeah.
there's lots of drinkers. So it turned out the best. We took one step forward and one step back, but here we are, still alive.
Yeah. My whole family's military.
Yeah?
Yeah. I grew up military. I grew up,
Nice.
Germany, Baden-Baden, Frankfurt, Lahr,
Oh, wow.
all the bases overseas.
Yeah,
That's where I got my travel bug. That's why I'm in tea.
Nice. Gives you an excuse to travel.
I got to. The pandemic,
Yeah.
for my mental health, a lot of people
Yeah.
were struggling because they were shut in. I was struggling because I couldn't go to Japan and China and India and these places that I go to source my products. I was like,
so you have like a retail space, but you're kind of like an importer too, right?
yeah. That's kind of like my main job, actually,
Yeah.
is importing, quality control, establishing relationships with my farmers, making sure everything's kind of ethically traded and their workers are being treated properly. And I actually go visit the places I buy from.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how many countries have you been in?
About 12 out of the 20 that I buy from.
Nice.
Every year I try to add on a country as well as revisit the ones that I'm currently studying in, because I usually take about 3 years per country to really deep dive into right now I'm deep diving into Japan, into their tea culture.
They take tea pretty seriously.
Oh boy, do they ever. I've been kind of putting off China because that's going to be almost a 5-year project, I think, with
Really?
them, because they're the huge, they're the big.
That's where it all originated.
That's all the origin story, right?
Yeah,
That's where
the origin story.
That's where all tea comes from,
Yeah.
originally, not supposedly.
So, and that's something I wanted to talk about a bit, was the history. I don't know how you want. We don't really have an order. We just make shit up as we go.
Yeah. Well,
But
let's
maybe
finish
just a
Argyle
good
Street
time.
history first.
Okay, there we go. Then we'll go to China.
Yeah. So basically, the convention center build 2017, and then the Argyle Street project, and then we bounced back 2018. Recovery year from having 6 months of lost revenue. 2019, awesome. I was traveling. I was in India. I was everywhere. And then 2020.
Yeah.
And boom.
2020. We don't even need to say it.
So now I'm back again. I'm like trying to travel a lot,
Right.
but I have had some health issues that have put me back, that have prevented me from traveling this year. I'm like, man, gotta catch a break.
Gotta catch a break. That's what it feels like, though.
But it's good. It keeps you mobile and always thinking, and it keeps my mind alive. And now when I go to tea expos across Canada and the US, I get talks on my survival story. I get talks on how I've maintained this business for 14 years under all this stuff that's gone wrong, right? And now I can add a pandemic onto my talk. So I'm like, well, geez, that's another 10 minutes right there.
Didn't David's Teagues go to business
during
the pandemic?
Yeah.
So
well, there was actually
that.
It was a little bit before.
Was it? Okay.
They had a rapid expansion as I was kind of gaining momentum, and then just overextended.
Yeah.
They had 300 plus stores in Canada.
Yeah.
Like big. They're trying to be a Starbucks of tea.
That makes your Sunnyside Mall thing not look so bad.
Yeah, well, they actually took my space in Sunnyside Mall.
Oh,
They took it
They
when
didn't learn
I
your
left
lesson.
there. No, I think the mall management also, when they stuck them with 6 months of rent, was like, oh, who wouldn't have done this? Phil.
yeah.
He wouldn't have stuck us with all that rent.
No.
So,
Oh, wow.
well, you know,
Well, there
but
you go.
when you're a big corporation, you can declare bankruptcy and not
Yeah.
have to pay anything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can just be like,
But
I get forgived.
it takes a lot of resilience as a small business owner. A lot of resilience. I don't know if people understand, the average person who hasn't run a business, just how difficult it is. You take your passion, you make it a career, and then you just get your ass handed to you for years after
Well, you don't want to give up.
No,
right?
you don't.
That's the tenacity
Yeah.
behind it, is because you just don't want to
Yeah.
let that dream go, because
Yeah.
it's your, you know, this is kind of my end game of my career. I was in hotels and finance and all that stuff before, made some money, and this is kind of what I semi-retired into.
Yeah.
And what would I do?
Yeah.
You know, what would I do?
Yeah.
What would I do if I couldn't do what I'm doing now?
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't. I guess I could write a book or travel writer or something. But
Yeah.
you know,
But you hang in there.
but I like my spot. I like my little shop on it.
And I really think that our communities are better off having locally owned, interesting shops rather than just big corporations, right? Like, we don't
100%.
want all the beer to be Budweiser. We don't want all the teas to be some major company. We don't.
Yeah.
The communities don't want that. They don't need that.
Yeah. The tea industry is kind of breaking through a little bit in that, but still, people still buying what we call commodity tea, the Red Rose, the Tetley, all these things that, you know, they're just buy their leaves really, really cheap from whoever would sell them the cheapest, and own huge farms, and you know, keep everything hush hush on
Right.
how they're paying their people, how they're treating their pickers, how all that stuff is very kind of not really talked about.
Right. And I've heard that there's probably more slaves in the world now than there was during the slavery, like we know about in the
Well, yeah,
Americas.
it's like an indentured servitude as they have now, because
Yeah.
they're not technically slaves,
Right.
but they'll offer them jobs, and then they're like, well, now you have to pay to live here, and now you have to
Yeah.
pay for this, and now you have to pay for that, and all of a sudden all your income's going to just survive,
Yeah.
and you're not making anything.
basically slavery.
Basically.
Yeah.
But they call it something.
They give them
different.
some tickets and take them back. Basically.
Thank you, British.
All right, so we caught up on the Argyle Street history.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the history of tea.
So the history of tea, I mean, tea is an ancient beverage. We're talking 5,000 years, old China. Like it was one of the first documented beverages that they're using medicinally in old texts. The problem with a lot of Chinese history is, as they're going through different dynasties, they'll burn the previous dynasty's emperor's stuff to make them look better. So it was very much like tea would be in fashion, then it wasn't. Then it was in fashion, then it wasn't. Because if the previous emperor liked tea, the next emperor would not like tea. So it kind of skipped dynasties, which is really a weird kind of phenomenon. But that's kind of what happened, and we lost a lot of history through just like old scrolls and stuff like that being lost. But we've dated trees back, you know, that have been in like cultivated areas, not just China either. We've dated a tree back in northern India 4,000 years.
Wow.
So it's an old crop, just cultivated for like commercial stuff, just, you know, in the thousands of years, relatively, you know, 1600s type thing, where they started really to like make it into like a agricultural crop, where before it was just wild harvested off trees. They'd pick it, they'd crush it up into like a mash, and then they would put boiling water on it, and then the monks would drink it for alertness, right? They would drink it as a stimulant.
Because
Caffeine, yeah. And then there's like L-theanines and riboflavins and all these like really good things in tea that actually help you mentally focus. They're actually really good for your neural pathways and healing and all sorts of things they're good for. But the monks would use it because they would meditate for days and days on end, no sleep.
Yeah.
So they would just use this
Pump
kind of
caffeine
crushed
to it.
up, and then they
That was before
decided
Red Bull.
Yeah. And then they were like, well, we could dry these leaves. It preserves them better.
Yeah.
Because up in the high mountains, you're only getting tea production maybe 6 months out of the year. Well, we're going to dry these leaves. We're going to crush it into a powder, and then we're going to mix it into a bowl and drink it.
You must have had fresh tea then.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it compare?
Right off the bush.
What does it taste like compared to dry tea?
Very vegetable. Like the vegetable content
sense.
is really, really high. Most of the tea we get commercially is dried and then oxidized, so it turns black.
Right.
And then that's how we make black
It'd be
tea.
like having a wet hop beer.
Yeah.
Like in harvest time, sometimes companies make like a fresh hop beer with like fresh hops right off the vine. Yeah, it does have like that vegetable-y kind of flavor.
Yeah, they even do that on tea fields. Farmers will just throw a bunch of tea leaves in a pot and they'll boil it and they'll drink it, just as like a farm brew type thing. And that's kind of how it was traditionally done. Cool. It's just leaves and water. Yeah. It's just now it's dried leaves and water because it stores better. Yeah. Right. I got a couple things here that I brought to show you. So back when tea started to become commoditized, they would pack their teas into bricks. Now this is like a section of a brick. This is actually cut with probably a bandsaw or something. But I wanted to do it so we could brew it. This is actually from 2010. This is what they call a CNNP brick tea. This is basically kind of like government rations. So this would be like a government sourced tea that the government of China would have sourced, and they would have like given portions out to soldiers or whatever. Wow. This is a newer version of it, but like back in 1900s, they would do this style of compressed tea cakes. They would compress them into cakes and they would put prints on them. They could use them as money. So they would be using compressed tea cakes as like a monetary exchange. So, one tea cake might get you a horse or, a tong, which is a bunch stacked up, wrapped in bamboo, will get you something. Yeah. So they had value, and that value was traded for other things. Silks.
With the Romans had salt. They used salt as a currency at times.
Yeah. So a lot of cultures will press their highly sought after commodities into cakes or into like discs or coins or
because they would be quite valuable those as well at one point, wouldn't they have been? Like the whole bricks would have been worth quite a lot. Yeah. And that's why the Boston Tea Party was such a big thing, because it was a huge, monetarily, that was a lot of value in that, for example, right?
Huge. Yeah. Well, especially with the taxes that they would reap from that, right? I mean, with the Boston Tea Party, it was all about taxation. It was nothing to do with tea. It was all about the tea the British were charging on the taxes, or the taxes that the British were charging on the tea. So, that's what it was all about. And then like, oh no, it was the Native Americans that did it.
So because they dressed up like Native
because
Americans.
Because they care about your British tea.
No, but I heard the white guys dressed up as Native Americans.
That's the lore behind it. I mean,
deflection there.
Yeah.
So the tea bag I don't know if people know, but the tea bag didn't come around until like 1920s.
Tea bag was invented by mistake. It was by Thomas Sullivan at the World's Fair. Crazy. I forget if it was in Philadelphia or New York, but one of those World's Fair places. And he was selling these sachets of Chinese teas in for
pre-measured.
For kind of samples, right? It was just like these little samples of tea to all these like rich Americans, and they were just plopping them in their teapots, and they were brewing them up, and then they were like, "Oh, we want more of this bagged tea." He didn't actually patent it. No. It was actually a couple hundred years after that it actually got patented as a bagged tea.
So crazy.
That lucky bastard that patented that. I mean, he's getting a penny off every single bag that's produced in the world. That's a lot.
That's a lot
of tea. A lot
of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny how things go. So how long is that going to take there, you think?
Well, typically what we're doing here for people that are earballing and not eyeballing, this is called Kung Fu. So this is basically, Kung Fu is like Kung Fu in its interpretation. It means doing well. Kung Fu just basically means doing martial arts well, or that style of martial art. This is Kung Fu Cha, so this means doing tea well. And basically you brew it in a bowl with a lid, which is called a gaiwan, and then you brew it. And the idea is that you put your tea leaves in your bowl, and then you brew it for 20, 30 seconds, pour it out, and then you're constantly rebrewing. Whereas this is a brick, and it's really hardly compressed. I'm just going to let this soak. Because it's not like a typical loose leaf. This is an old ration brick.
So I think you should get T-shirts made that say "I know Kung Fu." That way you won't get mugged.
That's right. That's right.
You don't look that dangerous, but
no.
Give people a warning.
Yeah. My bright shirts usually give it away. People that don't mess with me, like, oh, that guy's weird.
Right. Like my dad is a big tea drinker, and he's big into history. And I told him today we were doing a podcast with the tea guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, tea is the number 2 most popular drink in the world. And then me, being a dummy, I'm like, well, what's number one? And he looks at me like I'm an idiot and he says, water.
Yeah. The second most consumed beverage in the world.
I'm like, who's going to
water?
Coca-Cola? I'm thinking, what, coffee? Like, what is this? Beer? No. Water.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
There's a lot of people in China that drink tea. There's a lot of people in India. There's a lot of...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think coffee drinkers are really in the minority in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like a Western thing. Coffee is becoming more popular in Eastern cultures, but it's always been tea. Over in Asia, other Eastern countries, it's very much. And
So a question I want to know is, what is actually defined as tea? Because
Yeah.
there's like a tea plant,
that's right.
and that's all tea.
That's right.
But then we have a broader idea of what tea is, but like mint tea and herbal tea and all
Yeah,
these things. So
yeah.
that's like a whole other category.
Yeah, that's because our English language is so restrictive. The French
Yeah.
have a beautiful word for it called tisane, which is
Okay.
thé and sang,
Okay.
which means not tea.
Oh.
Tea, not tea.
Fake tea.
Yeah, basically. So it's basically kind of brewed how we would brew tea in that it's leaf and water, usually brewed hot, but it's not the tea plant. So it's not tea per se.
So when we think of tea, we're thinking of like black tea.
We're thinking of Camellia sinensis, which is
Okay.
the tea plant, right?
All right.
And then there's different like varieties, like hops have different varieties, but
Right.
they're all the hop plant, right? So we would have different varietals in different countries, elevations. It's very much akin to how we grow wine and grapes, or how we grow grapes in the wine industry versus how we grow tea plants in the tea industry.
So now when they say like white tea, is that still part of that family of tea plants?
Yeah, all tea, black
Green
tea,
tea?
white tea, green tea, oolong, black tea, pu'er tea, which we're drinking now, which is called dark tea. It's all the same plant. It's just how it's processed. So the one we're doing now, the pu'er, is actually a fermented tea. It actually goes through a fermentation. It goes through a wet pile. So it's basically gets kind of composted for a while, and then we pour it out. This is a pretty old brick, so this is going to take a couple soaks to get up and going. Wish we had a cup to share over there. Yeah,
It's very large, but
perfect. That's fine. I'll give him the dregs. Don't chew
Is
on
that
it.
because I'm the oppressor?
Yeah. Colonizers.
yeah, I don't think he deserves the good stuff.
No. So now you can kind of getting a little bit of that kind of almost oceanic, not quite fishy, but kelpy, fermented.
Yeah, fermentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that fermented kind of
Okay.
vibe from it, which is really cool. This is like probably one of my favorite styles. This is called pu'er, is from Yunnan, China, and pu'er is to Yunnan, China as champagne is to France. So it can only be produced there and called pu'er.
They take it serious.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's called heicha, which is basically dark tea in all the other regions, which is akin to sparkling wine.
And I don't think people realize how important tea has been in like global history and economics and wars.
Wars.
Addiction.
So many wars.
So many wars. Like
So
a
many
lot.
wars. Opium
it's
wars
the
is
opium
the
wars
big one.
Yeah, and it's probably a little bit of a misnomer calling it the opium wars because it was more about tea than it was opium.
Yeah, it was a tea war.
Yeah, it doesn't sound tough saying tea war.
No, it sounds more, yeah. So that was that was kind of a dark history. Tea has a lot of dark history. Tea's been traditionally used in, like it's a community beverage. People drink tea together. It's a beverage that either you're doing business. A lot of countries you go into a rug shop in Turkey and boom, tea at the door. And then there's an etiquette behind how much tea you drink versus if you're going to buy something. If you go to buy a rug, you have one tea, you're browsing. Second tea, you're interested. If you take that third glass of tea, you better be buying something. Or you're getting stink eye from grandma in the back.
Okay. That's cool.
So there's a lot of like kind of stuff around that. But yeah, the Opium Wars, there was two. Was basically the premise of it was the British were exporting tea to the UK, primarily from China, and they were kind of being a little bit aggressive in coming into the country, and the Chinese were like, no, we want to protect our sovereignty. We don't want you here on our soil. No tea for you. And the British are like, well, okay, we can't trade you tea for money, but we're going to grow opium. And
because they were sending, I think, was it 900 tons of silver a year there? So they're sending silver that doesn't get drank or smoked.
Yeah.
It doesn't rot.
Yeah.
Silver stays silver, but all the tea they were drinking. So they were trading silver that lasts for a consumable product, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of putting the upper hand for the Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the on the British side for sure. Yeah. But the main thing was like a lot of the people of power had already established this kind of tea love of tea, and they're like, this is unacceptable. We want our tea. This is part of our thing. This is kind of at that point just kind of being ingrained in higher society. Right. It wasn't a common drink then. It was just like kind of those wealthy people that would get tea. And ironically, because British consumed a lot of black tea, it started green on the Chinese side. And as it went overseas, it took about 6 months. It sped up with the tea clippers and the tea races and all this kind of stuff. But back because it was all sail ships.
Tea clippers is not like snipping the tea.
No, it was a nautical vessel. Yeah. Very similar to our Blue Nose schooner style, but sleeker and faster.
Wow.
So, yeah. And they wanted those fast sailboats to get high-priced items from China over and India, like spices, silks, tea, even some gold and stuff like that. Yeah. And they would have races, and the first ones to dock would get the best price, right? So there would be like the original nautical race, was over tea and commodity, not just tea. I mean, they were filled with all sorts of different things. But
so how does the tea get tied up with the opium?
Yeah. So at this point, the British were colonizing India, and they didn't really realize that tea could grow in India at this point. It had been growing there, but was kind of very much northern India, Assam, which is the northwest India, kind of grown on trees and picked and very, very rustic. Very, they weren't really cultivating it. They were drinking it, but it was very much a farmer type thing, a wild thing. I don't think the British really understood that it was the same thing, because it looked different, right? It was like it was raw leaf, or it was just leaves that were just withered out, and they'd be crushing it, and they would be putting it into a pot and boiling water and boiling it and drinking it. Like it wasn't what they would consider tea. That they were being the format that they were used to seeing out of China, which is leaf, right? Full leaf. So then they were like, okay, we're gonna get these farmers to grow opium, and then we're gonna pick the opium from India, and we're gonna sell it to Chinese, or trade it, not selling it, trading it for tea.
So you're trading a consumable for a consumable.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
You smoke your opium, we'll drink the tea. We'll meet back next Wednesday.
And they basically got an entire kind of country addicted to drugs.
And the Chinese probably didn't really realize what they were getting into.
They didn't. It was something that was kind of done on the black market. It wasn't never sanctioned by their government.
Right.
It was always like, going into a port, kind of very much like rum runners of the old day when the prohibition type stuff, right? And so there was, all of a sudden the Chinese were like, whoa, wait a minute. What we told you couldn't, we didn't want to do business on this level, and all of a sudden you're kind of forcing it onto us. Now you're not giving us gold and silver, but you're still taking our stuff and now you're addicting a population.
Now you got a social problem. And I don't know if people know, maybe some of the younger people don't know, but opium is heroin.
It's opiates. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a whole family of drugs.
Yeah. I mean, we have a huge opiate problem right now in North America. Not that it came from tea or that trade at all, but opioids were always used or poppies were used for medicine and doing that. It's just that when they refined it, all of a sudden it's stronger,
more addictive.
More addictive.
And then you get these pills from the last with the what do you call them? Just a few years ago, in the last couple decades, the drugs that they said it was an opiate, but they said it was non-addictive. The Sackler family. What is that?
Not fentanyl. No,
not fentanyl. What is it? It's part of the big opioid problem.
The oxycodone thing.
Yeah, that stuff.
Oh, yeah. There's a great documentary.
It's basically the same thing. It's opium. It's heroin. Yeah. And they said it was not addictive, and then there's all kinds of people that are addicted. It's a big problem even around here. There's hundreds of people.
In fairness, heroin was marketed as a non-addictive thing in the first place. So
that's why they call it like heroin. Yeah, the heroin to save people from their opium addictions.
Say with hashish was given hashashin is assassins that were given hashish to do murders.
Wow.
It's like then in the Middle East they used to give
so people have been trading addictive shit forever.
Yeah.
Getting people hooked.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. Maybe the human race likes to have dependencies.
Yeah,
I think that's probably true.
I mean, we're addicted to tea or coffee or caffeine.
Says the guy that sells beer and the guy that sells caffeine.
Yeah, it's I sell it thing for a living. So we sell herbals and stuff like that too. So it's not all caffeinated, but the bulk is.
Yeah. So the Chinese emperor realized they have an addiction problem,
right? And shut the borders.
Shut it down.
Like walls and not the Great Wall, of course, but cannons, and just fortified their borders, ocean borders. And the British couldn't touch them because the British had a huge Navy fleet at that point, as did the Dutch and Spanish. They were all kind of in the whole East India trade, kind of fighting for supremacy of the oceans and blah, blah, blah back at that period of time. But they couldn't come close to the shore. They would just blow them out of the water. Because the Chinese had invented gunpowder first. They were they were advanced when it comes to their weaponry versus other countries.
Fireworks and guns and all that stuff, cannons.
Yeah. So the British couldn't touch them. They would come close and their boats would be blown out of the water. But then they basically did a blockade on them. So the only stuff that China could get would be overland. So they're depending a lot of like India, but then you're going through connected to the Himalayan mountains. It was a difficult trek to get stuff. So, so eventually they just basically kind of put down their arms.
Broke them.
And they were like, okay, we'll give you, we'll let you occupy a certain area.
Right.
And that will be your trading area.
Is that where they got Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Hong Kong was like a 99-year lease or something like that.
Yeah. Hong Kong, I think, was in a First World War maybe when they solidified it. But there was a couple ports that were like British ports that they're like, okay, well you have to stay in these ports. We'll do business with you, but we don't want you roaming all over our country. We want to keep you here.
Yeah. Especially when they're roaming around with addictive drugs.
And just trying to take the commodities and put them on their vessels and take them away from people. Yeah.
And then don't they kind of smuggle more? Because I think there was the emperor put a kibosh on taking live tea plants out of China. Didn't allow that. Yeah, but of course they snuck some stuff out.
So they hired Robert Fortune, who is a Scotsman, I believe, who had surgery or his eyes looked almond shaped, and so he dressed up as a Chinese person and infiltrated
tea spy.
And at this point they kind of realized that growing opium's not a great crop because we're basically starving the farmers in India because all they're making and they're growing drugs and not growing food. We refuse to let them grow food, and so we're killing all these people on the Chinese side, but also the Indian side that we're trying to colonize, and they're being very upset about this.
Are you listening, Ben? You see what your people did?
So then they stuck the first tea plants into Darjeeling, India. The Darjeeling tea, right?
Yeah.
That's why Darjeeling tea tastes so different than all the other Indian teas, is because it's the Chinese tea plant versus the Indian tea plant. So it's the Camellia sinensis versus Camellia sinensis assamica, which is the Indian varietal. So they basically stole these teas, and they're like, okay, wait. At this point, I think they were kind of figuring out that tea would grow in India. So they basically took over this northern India area, and then planted vast amounts of tea. And
so it tastes different in a different climate.
Yeah. And then they just imported all their tea. They just stopped trying to get stuff from China once they stole all their tea.
Yeah.
And people as well.
People as well because they didn't quite have. I mean, anything like the Chinese have been doing things for 4,000 or 5,000 years. Like
Yeah.
they've got their shit down.
Yeah,
They
they
invented
basically
paper, all
invented
these
tea
things,
cultivation, right?
So then the newbies, the new people at this didn't really know how to do it, so they also stole some knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's kind of like the history of how tea kind of spread through colonization, and not just the British. I mean, the Dutch spread it and the Spanish spread it as well. It's not all on the British. It's just whoever was doing that colonization at the time that knew that tea would grow in these areas, and it was a very profitable thing to sell.
Yeah. Well, it's an addictive substance.
Yeah, especially to the, and then they started, then they went down to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka at this point they were huge coffee. If you ever heard Sri Lankan coffee, it's really good. But it wiped out 90% of the coffee trees, this blight. And so it left them, basically took away their main production. And then the British kind of rolled in, we'll save you, mowed down all the coffee trees, planted tea. And now tea is their major export. But it was from that colonization that kind of happened, for good or for bad, right? I mean, they did kind of establish a commodity trade there that's today very, very famous, but at the same time, how they went about it was not great, right? So tea has it's a really interesting way. But originally, tea was actually spread around through Buddhist monks, right? Through that old process of like grinding up the leaves, drying it, and consuming it as a powdered form or a really broken loose leaf form to help in meditation.
Interesting.
And then all the monasteries would plant their own gardens, tea gardens there. So the monks were the original kind of ones that would just kind of take the plants out, but not really like cultivate it in great big farms. It would just be for their own kind of thing.
It's really interesting because a couple of weeks ago we had a dog trainer on here, and she said that a lot of her studies come from the monks, because they taught a lot about, I guess they were early on in training dogs. And then I said, as a brewer, a lot of my training comes from the monks.
Yeah.
And I guess the monks are pretty involved in the tea too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They were. I mean, they're the first ones that really made it into a consumable commodity, right? Before it was just all farms and trees, and it would be something that would grow, but you wouldn't necessarily like. Now we grow it like in big fields, and we kind of trim it like a bush, like a hedge, and we just process the top leaves. So all the bottom leaves grow this top kind of tabletop. Then you don't only pick the new growth. Back then it was a little bit more rustic. You would just pick whatever was there, right? But not everything, because you still want new stuff to come. They were very conscious on that, but it wasn't as selective as it is now. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and as technology is advancing, we have like selective harvesters that are coming out now that will actually like go on the top of these tea bushes, and they don't like cut or prune. They actually will have rubberized wheels that pluck the tea.
Oh yeah.
There's a bunch of farms that are kind of
like how they ever seen a chicken defeather thing?
No.
They put like in a washing bin, and it's got these rubber fingers, and you just put the chicken in this washing machine, and it just, the rubber fingers, it just kind of spins around and takes all the feathers off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, same kind of thing. We're just like they're based off tensile strength. So new growth, the stems will have a different tensile than the old growth. So it won't actually pick what's old, because the stems are thicker. Right. The new stuff is more supple, more easy to pull. So off it comes. So it's a really kind of ingenious way, and it's just becoming more popularized now. But there's a couple companies that kind of have the patent on it, and they're very close. It's a Japanese-Australian shared company. But my friends in Mississippi, they use this technology.
They grow tea in Mississippi?
A lot of tea. Yeah, we're up to 10 acres now. Yeah, that's where I go to study most of my farming now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on the state side.
Cool. So it's too cold of a climate here, though.
Yeah. Our big thing here is ground frost. It would kill the root system.
Right.
Tea is an evergreen, so it'll actually last through winter. It's grown high mountains, so they get snow up there. But it's the prolonged frost, and it's the frost thaw that we get here that would just kill the plants. The only way you could do it is in a greenhouse, which is not great to grow a tabletop product. It takes 5 years to grow a tea bush that will actually produce like a hedge, right? You can't just plant a hedge. It's planted from sapling seedlings, and then
it'll take a while.
So 5 years before from seed is basically you're viable in optimal climates. So
cool. Did you want to pause and get more hot water?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah. Let's take a minute. Cool.
Are we back on?
We're back on.
We are back on, yeah.
Awesome.
What? So that's like a T and a disc?
Yeah, so this is basically kind of like how this was cut up into little squares. This is like
Just so they hold
compressed
it up.
disc. This is like a quarter gone because I've been ripping it off.
Okay.
But that's kind of like how they would compress it. This is really lightly compressed because we put this into whiskey barrels for a bit and we scented them. Not we, my friend from Liquid Pros did this, but we did a similar thing with Two Crows a while ago with loose leaf. We did gin, vermouth, Amaro, and port.
Oh, wow.
Barreled scented teas, which is
Cool.
wild. Yeah.
So it goes dry into a barrel?
Yeah. So, I mean, this would basically be stacked into a barrel, not touching the sides or anything. They would have like a wire basket kind of sitting in there, and the barrel would still kind of have like wet aromatics coming out of it, but it wouldn't be like touching anything wet. And then you have to like rack them and re-dry them because they do pick up moisture, right? Or humidity. So what I did with mine is I basically hung them through giant sacks inside the barrels. First version was putting the tea through the bunghole. We basically put in a big dry hop bag and flared it and then poured the tea through a funnel into this thing. And then we kind of just let it, and it just kind of 1 kilo would just kind of hang in there.
Yeah.
And we would just kind of shake it up, but the top wasn't removed from the barrel.
Yeah. So how'd you get it out?
Yeah, exactly. So I went back to Jeremy's brewery at Two Crows. He's like, I need this barrel tomorrow. I'm like, cool, I'll take the tea out. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think that far.
Yeah.
So I'm like basically sitting there with a spoon, and I'm spooning it. And
Shop vac down there or something?
That's exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did. Yeah, one of their guys working in the brewery was shop vacing up the floor after they were cleaning up. He's like, too bad you couldn't use this. I'm like, I can. So I went to Home Depot, bought a shop vac, star sand the whole damn thing, and then sucked the tea right out in like 2 minutes.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
The second time we did it,
Too bad I came up with that idea on the fly. Too bad I wasn't there.
I know. It would have saved me like at least 3 ulcers. The second time we did it, we actually removed the tops of the barrels.
Yeah, that's probably the way to go. Yeah.
Way easier.
So
we could just hang it in there and make sure it wasn't touching the sides, and we actually were able to put like I think 5 kilos.
It's like I heard. I don't know if you're familiar with like a monkey trap in Thailand. They'll take like a coconut and they'll cut a hole in it, fill it full of rice, and the coconut's tied to a tree.
Right.
And the monkey will reach in and get a handful of rice, but can't get their fist out.
Right.
You can go in like that, but the monkey will stay there until a human comes and gets it.
Right.
Because they don't think to let go of the rice and pull their hand out.
Right.
Yeah.
they want it.
Just goes to prove that we're not that much smarter than monkeys.
A lot of the time, no. There's a type of tea out there called monkey-picked oolong that's used to fetch a very high price on the market. And the lore behind it was that they would have primates that would go up into these trees and pick the most supple, awesome leaves, and they would reward them with bananas, of course, because you wouldn't want. Oh, you want some more? You wouldn't want to deny any monkeys or workers. Compensation's important.
Well, the monkey just won't show up if he doesn't get his banana, really.
Well, someone did it was like Teavana and a couple of these big tea producers in the States were selling this monkey-picked oolong, and someone did a calculation on how many primates it would take to pick all this tea, and they're like, it was an army of primates. So it's a translation thing. It actually meant monkey finger oolong. So when the tea's dried, it kind of looks like a crooked finger because it's rolled and dried. So think of like a very elongated monkey finger. That's the...
Yeah, but I want monkey tea.
Yeah, that
who doesn't?
That's the original on how it was done. But then it kind of caught on to the West that it was this monkey picked tea because when they translated picked from finger, evidently it looks the same when you're translating from Mandarin, and so that became a thing. And people
Look, Phil, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
People were like, well, I love that some geek needed to do the math on it before it was actually called out, because people were like, this is awesome, this stuff's great. And he's like, wait a minute.
The monkeys pick the most supple leaves.
Wait a minute. This is not feasibly possible.
I mean, I really like the idea of monkeys just army of veritable of just picking tea. That sounds amazing.
I want monkey tea.
Yeah, you get these old tea trees, you set them up there. And
I love monkeys.
Bring down a bushel of tea and you give them a banana. And they're like, oh, let's do it again.
Yeah, I went to the movies yesterday just see Planet of the Apes all by myself.
Yeah.
All by myself. The only one in the theater, all by myself, watching Planet of the Apes.
I saw the new one.
Yeah.
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 You know.
It'd be great if they were picking tea. Who doesn't like monkeys?
That could be the next film. That could be the next. It all comes round again.
Tea drinking Planet of the Apes.
That's right. That's hilarious. Get that out of there.
All right. So how's this one different?
Yeah. So this one is the same.
Oh, this is the whiskey barrel.
This is stuff that was put into a barrel.
Yeah.
Bourbon or whiskey? I can't remember which. Doesn't say on it. But yeah. Anyhow. But it's really interesting because tea is aromatic, or it's very porous, and it gets aromas very easily. That's why jasmine green tea is so popular, because you can basically rack dried green tea in jasmine flowers and it scents it. It'll pick up all of the surroundings. Chai or masala chai, same thing. If you take that black tea out of a spice blend, it tastes spicy without the spices even coming in contact with it.
Just picks it up.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So
In its dry form.
Yes.
It's still delicious.
Still delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. So chai tea is actually like a black tea leaf infused with chai?
No, it's right now what we consider like masala chai. Chai actually means tea in India. So if you go to India, you order a chai, you get a black tea.
Okay.
It's just through big corporations calling it something that it's not, is why we call chai, but it actually doesn't mean spice tea. Spice chai would
so it's
be
a spice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like masala is basically a blend of spices, right? So you could typically it's cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, clove, vanilla sometimes, anise, fennel. Yeah.
So it varies.
It varies, yeah. And it regionally varies too. Like when I travel to India, northern Indian masala chai is way different than southern Indian masala chai. Like it's very varied on what's grown locally, right? So so it's all what spices grow up there. Northern India, very famous for their hot, spicy cinnamons and gingers and stuff like that. Where southern India is very famous for its cardamom and vanilla, more mellow, smoother, sweeter things. So their spice blends will be very different regionally.
There's something I don't really know a lot about. I only have like herbal teas at home.
Yeah.
But when I was a preacher, I spent a lot of time in the homes visiting little old ladies and drinking a lot of tea. And I just kind of got tired of just tea. Like I don't have like regular tea in my house. I have like mint or chai or stuff like that.
Black tea by itself is black tea tastes like black tea.
Yeah.
Except for me. I can tell the difference between regions and sometimes harvest within regions and all that kind of stuff. But it becomes from experience, right? It comes through like decades of tasting. I was a taster before I was a seller. I would back when I was doing finance and hotels and all that kind of stuff. I was doing writing and stuff just as a side project on like tea producers would send me the stuff. Like, what do you taste? So I've always been like a taster, but just not really paid for it.
Hobby.
It was just a hobby. Yeah. It was just like, oh, I taste this, this, and this. They're like, wow, you're bang on. I'm like, okay.
Because I bet it would be a lot like in the beer world, there's so many styles of beer.
Yeah.
But here in Canada, we think of American light lagers as beer. Most people do.
That's right.
Then you kind of have to, like the craft beer nerds, get a little more nuance with all the different styles.
Yeah. And then you go up and up and up, and then you have your beer Cicerone and all those levels. Where in tea, we have the tea sommelier, which they kind of stole from the wine industry because we have so many parallels. But I don't like that they use that word. They should have used their own accreditation, right? Don't take someone else's. Call it a tea, I don't know, something.
Yeah. Make up something.
Get your own
Chinese word.
Yeah, get your own word. Yeah. Something.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get some...
Yeah, so this is a pu'er from Yunnan, China, scented in barrels.
It's lighter than I expected it to
Yeah.
be. It comes at you like differently than the other one.
Yeah, it's not as
It's up front.
astringent.
Yeah,
and,
astringent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you can definitely smell the whiskey on it.
Yeah. It comes out a lot more where you're scenting a tea in aromatics. Like if you if you smell of jasmine green tea, it smells like, wow, you drink it, you get some jasmine, but it's not near as much as the aromatics. And a lot of the tea experience is increasing those aromatics. So when I'm doing blending and stuff like that, I want to, like my Earl Grey, for example, when I make my Earl Grey with bergamot fruit, I want it to be real bergamot fruit, preferably from Bergamot, Italy, and then juiced down and then sprayed on the leaves, dried.
Is that what makes Earl Grey Earl Grey?
Yeah, citrus fruit.
Wow. So I guess orange pico would have some citrus in there too.
Orange pico is broken leaves, so orange pico is just a tea grade. Yeah.
So many lies in the tea industry, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, it's not lies. It's just a little bit of information that was passed down through big corporations that
Except
didn't
for that
know
monkey
any better.
thing, that was a straight up lie.
That was straight up lie.
That's
yeah,
straight
they're
up
just
lie.
trying to sell tea to tea snobs that were kind of called out. They're like, wait a minute.
There's so much I don't know.
Yeah. So Earl Grey was actually invented by the Italian sailors to combat scurvy.
Oh,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Because
so they-
citrus really helps to fight scurvy.
Yeah, so
So
that-
it was a naval war technology, basically.
Yeah, so they would have all these citrus fruits on board these ships, and they would eat the juice out of the citrus first, and then they would scoop it out and eat the meat. But then they were left with these citrus rinds that they would dry, break up, and put in black tea and boil. And that's kind of how the original Earl Grey was kind of made. And then this the Earl Grey got a hold of this and decided that he wanted this for English consumption, and then the Chinese perfected making the bergamot into an oil. So they would extract it into a vegetable oil, and then they could spray it on the dry leaves, which they make, and then sell back to the British.
Oh, there you go.
And that's how kind of Earl Grey was kind of made. But originally, it was a tea to combat scurvy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when you're drinking Earl Grey next, you go, scurvy tea.
Well, there's so many things that we don't realize are like military technology. Like dried pasta was a military technology. They figured, because they used to make fresh pasta, but they need to figure out a way to get sailors all around the world to conquer the world. So they figured out how to dry pasta, put it in barrels dry, and then cook it on a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the whole like invention of necessity.
Yeah.
Right. Where you're like, oh, we need this. Well, we already have this. Well, what if we,
Yeah, same as the IPA.
Dry.
And nothing motivates people to figure shit out than conquering the world and killing folks.
That's right.
Sad, but true.
Yeah, it's funny because our IPAs now would be nothing like the IPAs
sure
that they would have had back in their actual.
They would have been way stronger back in the day, wouldn't they? They would have been more alcohol and more hops, I'm guessing, right?
I would think. I think extreme amounts of hops. Like
Yeah, like
because it's
extreme amounts of
it's
hops.
meant to preserve, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the whole hoppiness came from.
and they wouldn't have cared about oxidation or anything like that.
I doubt it.
It probably would have tasted like
I heard that there was so much plant matter in it that they were actually green at sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, they had like a green. The IPAs had like a green tint to them. There was so much hops.
Could you imagine having to do that as a brewer? With that many hops to turn it green and sell for things, you would never be able to
Oh,
recoup
it'd be
your
hard to
money.
drink. I made a hop tea once and gave to one of my staff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
They had like strong hop tea because hops are bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of old wild hops that grow up in Wolfville that were brought over by the Acadians, because the Acadians were the first ones to bring stuff over, and they partnered a lot with the Mi'kmaq before the British came in and kicked all the Acadians out. But previous to that, they so I'm doing a lot of foraging stuff up in Wolfville now. I'm taking an apprenticeship program, and we find all sorts of cool stuff left over on old Acadian homesteads, and hops is one of them. They have wild hop plants. So I was like, I'm going to pick a couple cones and dry that out and make that for tea.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you about that next. And then with hops, like in the early days, they bring some hop plants here to make beer, but then there wasn't always a lot of hops, so they would use other things to bitter the beer, like pine or spruce needles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it was probably a similar thing with the early pioneers trying to get their tea fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we do some bittering of some local beers with tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a couple companies that work with me on that, so that's kind
Cool.
of fun.
So what kind of stuff do you forage in Nova Scotia to make tea?
Well, it's not tea; it's tisane. So it would be
Right.
herbs.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's Yeah, so we'll use the term
fake tea.
We'll use the term tea as a loose terminology on the podcast. Yeah, people get mad at me when I'm too technical.
We're not mad at you, Phil.
But everything like wild chamomile grows here.
Really?
Burdock, like so many plants grow here that we can make tea out of.
Elderberry.
Yeah. The berries and the plant. There's tons.
So like the loose idea of tea is just anything you soak in hot water and get some flavors, right?
Typically dried, soaked in hot water.
Right. So like
because
some
you want
of
an
our
infusion, you don't
First
want
Nations folks must have had some form of something of that.
Yeah, a lot of stuff I'm learning is from the Mi'kmaq people. My teacher is actually trained in Mi'kmaq medicines.
Oh wow!
So we're like today we just picked a bunch of sweet fern, and making a thing with that. So
sweet fern.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's a lot of stuff out there that they've used for traditional medicines for so long that it's lost. People don't really know.
Because like elderberry has like immune support stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would ginseng would be a tea?
Yeah. Ginseng's a root, so same as like a ginger or anything like that comes in a root. Roots are generally really concentrated because a lot of your energy and your nutrition is going into that root to feed your plant. And if you pick it at the right time, that has all those nutrients in it, and then you typically dry it. But you need to really like boil a root to get a lot of medicinal benefits. Same as like chaga, which is a mushroom, which is also from Mi'kmaq culture. Like no one knew about chaga.
Really high like antioxidant.
Like crazy amounts.
Probably like dried blueberries. It probably does a lot of things.
Yeah, tons of it. So.
But it's not tea.
It's not tea, but it's a
tea.
It's a tisane or It annoys me that their English language doesn't have a good word for that.
But you're still interested in it.
I'm still really interested in it, especially our local stuff. Because I always call my businesses like the global local, because we buy all from local farms, small producers, small holders from all these different regions, and I'm like, man, I'm really missing a opportunity here on our just stuff that grows here that we can dry out and that's
smart.
Used for not just medicinal, but just stuff that's tasty to drink.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
a lot of it
the people that moved, the people that came from Europe over here, figuring out how to do everything, and a lot of those ancient things we've lost.
Yeah.
Like, see a lot of people lately trying to learn how to garden again, trying to hunt again, raise animals, because we saw during the pandemic with the supply chains, it can get scary.
Yeah.
It can get really scary.
Yeah.
When you go to the grocery store, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be more self-sufficient. This whole craze with sourdough and stuff like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. It would be similar with, I guess, tea.
Yeah. They tried to do that in the American Revolution when they broke from the British. They were like, we're not going to import tea because British are bad. British bring tea. So they tried to grow it. That's where a lot of the stuff comes from. Mississippi is the old test fields that a lot of the old, like Unilever, which was back then not Unilever, but basically they turned into Unilever.
The oil company?
Unilever, they own everything food-wise. Tetley,
Oh wow.
Unilever, like so many.
It's like one of those six big corporations that owns
big
everything.
Corporations that Kraft or whoever's done under Unilever, like they own so much. Yeah. They were the ones that did these test sites in the States, and they planted these teas all over. The ones that are still in operation is the South Carolina, the Charleston Tea Plantation. They're an old Unilever or an old test site, and then all around through Texas, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, all down through there. Anywhere it was warm and that they had good soil drainage, they're like, we can grow tea here. And then they quickly discovered that they have to pay people a wage to pick these teas, and it's really, really labor intensive, and they could never sell it for what they can get from the Chinese or the Indian.
Right.
So they're like, okay, well, we're not going to do this. We're just going to buy it from India instead of China, and we're going to import it ourselves instead of going through the British, and then boom.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. But a lot of these test sites yielded a lot of these small growers that are cropping up now. They're like, yeah, we can do it here, and with these mechanized systems that are picking tea now that are not super labor intensive. You can put this handheld harvester over the top of these tea plants and pick them through more modern technology. that all of a sudden the labor factor is becoming not so critical.
Well, and imagine it's a lot like beer, right? Like I can't make beer the same price as Budweiser, but we're at a place now where people appreciate locally made stuff, so they're willing to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
Imagine it'd be the same thing for coffee, tea, and a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, but could you imagine if all your hops had to be picked by hand?
Yeah, it'd be expensive. Yeah, it's expensive enough.
Now they have hop harvesters that'll go, and they just, they've got a couple on the island, PEI, and they're great.
Yeah.
But before that technology was out, hops were all picked by hand. So they're cultivated that way. They're grown low. They're grown vines. Same kind of principle, right?
But it's kind of neat that, people have a more of like I don't know what you call it, a craft or a specialty appreciation for some of these things, and are willing to spend a little more money.
Thank you.
To have a more artisan experience with their products, right? I think it's pretty cool.
And the story behind a lot of the farmers that I buy from, people will come in and ask me, where'd this batch come from? Well, I found this when I was in Japan last time. It was this little farmer in Uji, Japan, right outside of Kyoto, and I connected with them, and they're really cool. They only have like 3 acres as their plot, and then he'll give me very small amount, but because most of the farming in Japan is communal. You don't buy direct from farm. You buy from a central warehouse that sources their leaf from all these different farms, because that's how they do it. They believe in supporting a community as opposed to one single farmer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very community driven. So to get like a single origin Japanese tea from one specific farm that has their own production facility, you kind of have to go there and get to know somebody for them to give it to you. Oh, wow. Otherwise, they're like, no.
So different, isn't it?
You're not going to appreciate
different
this.
Cultures.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
It's an appreciation thing. They're like, until they see that light in your eyes when you're trying their product and you're in front of them and you're kind of trying to speak their language and you're struggling but you're really passionate about it. They can see that it transcends language. If you're passionate about something and you're trying to talk to someone about it, they're like, yeah, okay, he's the deal.
He's cool.
He's the deal. We want to sell it to him, even if he drinks it all himself.
Yeah.
He's going to really like this.
That's cool. Or find people that appreciate it too.
Yeah, and that's why people come to my shop, is they'll find that they're expensive, but there's also cheap tea there too. That's not that way. So it's just.
I think it's more and more important for us to have like direct from producer to consumer chains that's not dependent on the big companies. You know, like all of our groceries come from like 2 big companies here.
That's right.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. Like you won't see my tea in any grocery store.
No. Good.
I would refuse to.
Yeah.
The only thing I would do would be a boutique grocery store. It just because, well, one, they wouldn't buy my tea because of the margins on it. Right. I would want too much money for it. Yeah. And it's just not my thing. I'm very much it can only be on the shelf for a certain time, and tea has a very long shelf life because it's a dry good, so you can keep it sealed for years and years. But I want my stuff to be by harvest, so I want someone to pick a tea off my shelf. They're like, oh, it's June, so this must be this year's stuff. And if that farm isn't producing until July, I'm like, actually, that's last year, but it's still good.
Yeah.
But if you want to wait a month, you're going to get the fresh stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll actually turn away like sales if I know that customer is really looking for that fresh stuff that was just picked 2 weeks ago that I'm getting.
Because they know the difference.
Yeah, or sometimes they don't know the difference. So that's what they want, and I'm not going to sell something to somebody because they might think it's something. Right. So, yeah, we have that integrity, right? That kind of like we don't try to put anything over on anybody. It's just it is.
Well,
what
that's the thing with small businesses. You usually have a little more of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're going right to the people who make this. You're looking them in the eye. You're buying it from them. You're bringing it here, and you're looking the person in the eye that you're selling it to, and there's some like a human chain of connection.
Yeah.
Right?
It's trust there, right?
Yeah, it's a trust.
Yeah.
With these big companies, like there's so many people involved. There's diffusion of responsibility. Nobody really cares.
There's health and safety instead of trust there.
Yeah.
Well, it's so much like a family that in late 2018, I went to one of my farmers' weddings in India. He invited me. Wow. Because he's like one of my kind of tea mentors. He taught me a lot about agriculture before I really studied it in the States. And he's like, you can come and stay with us and go to my son's wedding. And it was amazing.
Was it a long wedding?
A week. It was insane.
One of my guys in the kitchen said he had to go back to India for a wedding. I'm like, okay, well, you gone on like a few days? 2 months. He was like, well, it was his brother getting married. So he was gone for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. It's a long process, but
It's a big thing. Yeah.
But to be invited to it is kind of like very much an honor, because not everybody would be involved in that inner circle, right? Especially staying with the family and then like hosting you, and you like, I didn't have any important roles in the wedding, of course, because still foreigner.
Yeah.
So
you get the week-long version.
Yeah.
But the brother had a 2-month-long version.
Yeah, well, they're also kind of a modern family as well, so they're not going to go with the full, like they didn't go with the horse-drawn carriage down the road. He drove his little white RVR and called it his horse, right?
Cheating already.
Yeah. I mean, they're more modernized, right?
Yeah.
They're not really they're in Indian tradition, but it's more, it's less strict. I mean, they still don't eat beef and all that stuff, but cool family.
That's cool.
Cool family.
So how big of an operation would that be? Like how many employees would be on a farm that?
So they, on their farm, it's in Bihar, India, which is right outside of Darjeeling. They employ Aboriginal people that live on the land, and they go around to different tea farms and harvest when the tea is growing. So they might harvest there for a week, and then they'll come back in the next month and harvest, and the next month. So they're not there all the time. But there's probably 6 people that harvest.
Wow.
Like, it's very small. It's only like maybe 5 acres.
That's cool.
Small.
Do you buy like all their product?
No.
No.
I buy a lot of it, but I would never buy all of a farm's product.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I want them to sell to other people too.
You don't want them to be like dangerously dependent
I don't
on
want
one?
no.
That's cool.
Not at all. Because if my business fails, then they're screwed.
Yeah.
Right. I would never want to do that. That's the big boys do that.
Right.
They'll buy entire.
Because then you're stuck.
Starbucks says that they'll buy an entire coffee thing. And
then they're dependent on this one company.
they can only sell to that one Starbucks, right?
Wow.
And then
Good
they
for
can
you,
dictate
Phil.
the price.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't dictate my price.
No.
I ask the farmers what they want, and then that's what they get.
Wow.
Right.
They
I
must
mean, I
love
haggle
seeing
sometimes depending on what country it is in, because in India, if you don't haggle,
they don't respect you.
Yeah, then you're not a good businessman. So there's some of that. But once you've been doing it for 14, 15 years from some farms, they're like, okay, we're just going to send you the offer price. We're not going to go through this back and forth because we know it annoys you.
Okay.
Right. It does annoy me because that's not how we do business here, right? So
it is also a huge waste of time, really. I mean,
it's a lot of back and forth, and it's a lot of when you're there, it's fun because you're sitting at a table, you're drinking, you're going back and forth, you're kind of hum and hawing about quality, and you're eye to eye. But when it's like back and forth on emails and the odd like Zoom call or something like that, it's not the same, right?
It's like getting a cab in Mexico. It's a job.
Yeah.
There's no meters. There's no standard price. It's just whatever you can dicker.
Yeah. And then,
I got robbed so bad from the airport. Saw me coming.
Yeah.
It was stupid how much I paid for a cab from the airport.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that till about 3 or 4 days in. I'm like, wait a minute.
But the economies of scale are so different. Like when I'm traveling throughout India, like you get a plate of dumplings for 25 cents.
Yeah.
Like your money goes a long way in India, and other countries as well. That especially if you're U.S., but our buying power in Canada, like the U.S. buying power is way higher because their dollar stronger. Mm-hmm. But like back when our dollar was close to par, it was awesome. Their buying power was such higher, and you could go there and just get away super cheap, right? So you're spending $5-6 on a cab. You're like, that's not a lot of money. I spend almost $30 to get to my house to downtown Halifax.
Yeah.
But $5 is a day's wage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's
Or if you go there with like $100,000, you can live pretty high.
Well, you can buy a house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No problem.
you used to be able to do that here.
yeah. That's how you ended up here.
Exactly.
Oh, $100,000. You can buy a village. Like you can get a house there for $10,000.
Yeah. Wow.
A nice one.
I bet.
With, with people that'll do your cleaning and everything. Like you have
Why are we here?
You can have a staff. Like it's.
See you later.
It's it's a different way of living. It's just but you got to deal with high poverty and crime, and you got to deal with all the stuff that comes with those very class-based systems, right? Where, people from here that are making a decent living will go there and they'll just buy all the stuff, but they don't, people will break into their houses and they view them as being super wealthy and rich.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
it's a different way of life.
Right. Well, I really believe when people's basic needs aren't being met, they do desperate things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like we see the crime rate go up here when the economy gets tough.
Yeah. I mean, your family's starving.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. Or if you're
I'm going to feed my kids.
Fentanyl addiction or whatever is getting out of control, or whatever it is, you know,
goes up like all you know, substance abuse problems goes up during recessions. That's just a known fact.
Yeah.
Like we've known that for years.
I don't know. Did you ever hear? I mean, a lot of the fentanyl, because there's a big fentanyl problem now. Fentanyl
Huge,
is like a synthetic drug that they sneak into so many other drugs to kind of cheapen it up. But I've heard there's a bit of a conspiracy with all this because a lot of this fentanyl is produced in China. Somehow it gets to the Mexican cartels. They mix it in with a bunch of shit and then bring it up here. And it's the conspiracy is that the Chinese are using this as a bit of a revenge for the opium wars. That's one of the.
That's a pretty long game to play.
Yeah, well, the Chinese do long games though.
Yeah,
they think much longer term.
Yeah,
than we do.
I mean, Canada is a British colony, so I can kind of see that, but I don't. Yeah, I mean,
who knows?
Or they're just getting a lot of money for it, and they just don't care where it goes.
Don't care where it goes.
And it just happens.
I mean, why would they really care about us if we've done horrible shit to them? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all not just Canada and the U.S., but all Western,
right?
All Western side, like, if that in fact is happening, I wouldn't be shocked. But
I wouldn't be shocked at all.
You know, a lot of stuff comes out of a lot of different countries that we don't know about.
Yeah,
right? Good and bad. So
yeah, goes both ways.
It's the nature of the consumers. If just don't take it. If you don't want it,
right?
Well,
maybe that's scaring some people straight. My goodness.
I mean,
cocaine is super dangerous.
Everything.
Now,
everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't want the risks, just don't take it. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not a cocaine guy.
Me neither. I get all my energy off caffeine. That's as hardcore as I go.
I have a coffee addiction. It's bad.
Oh,
I've been trying to keep it in check. So you don't just play with one team with the other. You drink coffee and tea.
Oh, I love coffee.
Yeah. What's your favorite coffee?
Right now I'm on to more like Ethiopian beans.
Yeah.
I like that more like stone fruit kind of variety. But light roasts. I love my light roasts.
Really?
I don't like super dark. More because of the caffeine content probably. Because light roasts are
more caffeine,
more
right?
Caffeine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Same with tea. The less produced it is, the higher caffeine it has.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive a bit because you think like the stronger, darker flavor would have more caffeine, but it really breaks down the caffeine content, right?
Yeah. Well, tea, it's kind of similar to that in that black tea typically has more caffeine than green tea because the oxidizing, the processing kind of brings out the caffeine in those leaves. But the difference between black tea and green tea, white tea, caffeine level is marginal. What you feel in your body.
Now, I imagine like water temperature has a lot to do with it. How did I do? Was the water too warm?
Yeah, it's
too cool.
Great for the style that we're doing because we're just doing consecutive steeps.
Okay.
But if I was going to do Western style where it's a teapot and leaves in it, black tea boiling, green tea 85C or 80C. I never put boiling water on green tea.
Okay.
It's too porous. It'll the leaves aren't oxidized. They're basically picked, cooked, and dried. So we call it the kill green, which basically keeps the green in the leaves. It's like steaming broccoli.
Okay.
If you steam broccoli, leave it on your counter, it'll stay green. If you take a raw broccoli, leave it on the counter, it's going to turn brown.
Right.
That's oxidizing. Cooked stuff doesn't oxidize as fast as raw. So, but because of it's steamed or pan fried or cooked, however that process is, it becomes bitter, and those tannins come out really fast.
Right.
And tannins are what's that kind of bittering agent in tea. Whereas black tea has this more of a barrier from that oxidizing that prevents the bitter tannins from coming through.
Like with beer, you boil the hops.
Yeah.
Isomerizes the alpha acids, brings out the bitterness.
Yeah. So very, very, very similar
So
process.
the temperature of the water, but do you notice the mineral content of water in different places making a different tea?
Huge.
Yeah.
If I go out to my in-laws' place that are on a well, especially when they had their place in West Chesapeake, not so much now that they're in Truro, but when they were by the ocean, they had a very brackish well, they had a water softener and all that kind of stuff, filters. But Yeah, it tasted very, very different. I love like Japanese green tea with their water. I would go over there and just get water from them. Just to make my green tea with, because it was like very oceanic.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think of that, but the mineral content of the water makes a big difference. I know it does with beer, because if you're making different styles, like English beer or whatever, sometimes you put in different minerals to kind of mimic that.
Yeah.
And I know with bread making too. So that's why like New York style crust is supposed to be like, and the New York bagels and New York pizza dough is so different because of the mineral content of the water there.
Right.
Yeah, and I've noticed with Montreal, when I go to Montreal, the dark beers and the coffee taste so different.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It must be the water. Must be the water chemistry.
Must be. Yeah.
It's like a tanginess to the coffee there somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, it's well, tea is essentially water and leaves. So water chemistry is going to play a huge part. At the shop, we industrial filter out all our water, so it basically brings it down to a neutral, because we want people to taste the tea, not what's in the water.
Yeah, well, it could be chlorine and everything in the water, right? That's going to set everything off.
But then people will bring it home and they'll drink it at home. It didn't taste it like it did in your shop. Like, well, it's because we're using industrial filtered water, and you're using Halifax water. So,
and the water's what, like 90% of the tea.
Yeah. 99%.
99%.
Point something percent. Yeah. It's like less than a % that your tea has tea in it by the time you remove the leaves.
Right.
Versus,
But if you take the time to actually just taste different water, I mean, it does just taste with anything else in it. It does taste quite different, actually.
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
it makes a big difference with pizza and bread, stuff like that. It's pretty cool. I think some of the real pizza nerds do water salts and minerals and stuff like that to get the pizza and the bread.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, to adjust your pH levels and stuff like that in the water.
Some nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what takes something from good to great.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as like tea farmers will do like a lot of soil testing and stuff like that to make sure their soil acidity and stuff like that is proper, because tea plants love acidic soil. So like putting pine mulch, anything like that high acid is great for tea plants. But if you don't maintain that, then your plants, they'll grow, but they won't taste great. Right? So because that's where they draw all their nutrients from, is your soil. Right. Well, if you don't have good soil, you can have good plants. They're just not going to taste great. So I have a couple of tea plants in little pots at home. People are like, oh, are you going to harvest that? Like, no, it's going to taste horrible. Yeah. It's got Canadian Tire soil in it.
Probably made out of tires.
I mean, this is potting soil for like ornamental plants. It grows, but would it taste great? No. It's probably horrible.
You don't really know what you're doing with growing tea. You leave that to the experts, I guess.
I grew up, but we won't grow in this climate. I'm not gonna greenhouse it here. It's gonna be too expensive. Down the line maybe, but not until technology catches up.
So what is there any future plans for the tea house for your company?
Not particularly. I would like to do some more like local grown stuff. I would think it would be really cool to have a Nova Scotian, all Nova Scotian like tea.
Cool.
Tisane. This would be tea in it. That would be all local ingredients. Would be really, really cool. Unfortunately, a lot of those have to be like wild foraged, and the stuff that we grow here aren't organic. And I know there's a lot of eye rolling when it comes to the organic industry. We're an organic shop, so we kind of have to follow that suit, because if we don't, then we'll lose our certification.
Right.
But that's always a problem because it's so expensive for farmers. So sometimes we'll get some tea in that's like, we'll test it for spray, because you can lab test that. But when it comes to their soil, I'm just going to take them at their word, because if they're a small farm, they're not putting a bunch of chemicals on it. They can't afford it. Yeah. they're just using their cow, using fertilizer like you normally do.
Yeah, they've done it the same way for hundreds of years, generations.
Yeah, a lot of these bushes are hundreds of years old that they're picking from. Like, you're not going to get a healthy bush that's going to last that long with using chemicals.
There's no Roundup there.
No, it would just. So that's what I would like to see eventually. But right now, it's just par for course. Like maybe an expansion into another store or two. We're looking at downtown Dartmouth possibly, and I'm really picky where my second location is. I kind of got burnt the first time. And it's got to be perfect. It's got to be. warehousing is becoming a big issue for us. We're getting a lot of stuff in. And there's no
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, or if you'd like to support us, please visit Roofhound Brewing Company at 573 Main Street, Kingston, or buy our product wherever it's available. Do you do much, including our foolishly optimistic IPA, your local NSS? Tell folks about how to find your tea.
Worldteahouse.ca. Yeah, just pop on there, pop onto the shop, and it's all listed by tea types. And we don't go too much into like medicinal sides because we're not doctors or certified herbalists. It's what I'm kind of working on now, becoming a, certified forager and herbalist. But until I reach that stage where I'm not just an apprentice, that I actually reach a certified level, I'm not giving any medical advice.
Yeah, no, you be careful of that.
Even if there's books and books and books that support it, I'm not comfortable doing that because just drink it because it tastes good. Yeah. And if it has good benefits, awesome.
Yeah. And people can do their own research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We got people coming in like, do you have nettle? Do you have this? Do you have that? I'm like, sure. Mm-hmm. Raspberry leaf.
You're not going to make any health claim promises with it?
No, we have some teas that are like called a sleep blend that help you sleep. It's got chamomile and valerian and a bunch of stuff in it that are sedatives, and it's fine. It helps you sleep. But am I going to say this is going to knock you out every single night? No.
And a lot of time there's a placebo effect with that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. To a degree, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. No.
Any big trips planned?
Well, all my trips this year have been on hold for medical, but until now, not until the specialist gives me the 2 thumbs up and being like, yeah, you can fly again.
Nice.
My trip to Japan was canceled. My trip to Thailand was canceled. My trip to India was canceled this year. I did go to the World Tea Expo in Las Vegas, which was awesome. Okay. That's my yearly pilgrimage to the biggest tea conference in North America.
A little probably safer to find medical attention in Las Vegas.
Well, yeah, they basically
some
said
tea plantation.
I can fly within North America. It's fine. But if I'm up in the Himalayas, what the hell?
Yeah, you want to be in good shape.
Yeah. So I'm basically sticking to here. I might go down to Mississippi again in the fall, do some tea harvesting and picking.
Cool.
I'm pretty active with that farm. But nothing really until I get the okay to make sure that it's safe. My wife would follow me to the airport and probably stick me in a duffel bag if I did. No flying for you.
No flying for you, sir.
Yeah. I'm only going to Kingston. Jamaica.
Well, anything else you wanted to add?
No. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
We got some history. We got some how to make tea.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
A little bit of my ranting about downtown Halifax and their building.
It's always good. We drank some tea.
Drank some tea. Talk a little bit about the challenges of just keeping a business alive.
Yeah.
And respect for you.
That's a big thing. You too. We've all gone through, especially us that have pulled the 10 plus years. I don't think it's been over 10 for you.
8.
8, okay.
Yeah.
Close. But I mean, anybody who's made it through, the 2020 to 2023 bump was, so many people didn't.
It takes a certain level of stubbornness.
Yeah, and I think we're the only tea company in Halifax that actually got through it. And a lot in Canada. So, it was tough. But a lot of our small independent shops kind of got together, and we did a bunch of stuff with Zoom and online stuff, and really helped each other up. And there's that really good sense of community when you have like someone that only owns 1 or 2 shops here. We kind of stake out our claim a little bit in our area. Like I kind of have the Eastern Canada side, and my friend's got the Montreal. Then another friend that's kind of got Ontario. Nothing really in the prairies, but Alberta a little bit, and then and then Vancouver or the BC is just crazy. There's so much tea there.
Sound like tea drinkers.
It's a free for all. It's
hippie tea drinkers.
It's like the Wild West of tea over there. It's like no one stakes a claim.
Watch your back. On the West Coast tea business.
Yeah. Oh,
it's like 1800s over there.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. The competition's just crazy. Like there's so many, tea companies that it's nuts. But we do well on our East Coast side, so I'm happy with that.
That's good.
People ask, why Halifax? Why do you have a shop here when you can have Toronto and Montreal and have a lot more population? I was like, because I'm always happy to come home.
Yeah.
Right, whenever I'm traveling away, I'm dealing with 12, 14-hour flights and all this stuff, and I get home like, I'm home.
Yeah, I know. When you've been in some chaotic place somewhere else in the world and you land in Halifax, it just feels so quiet.
So nice, so nice. And even Halifax, compared to the rest of Nova Scotia, can sometimes be hectic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
It's just
It's a good place to be home.
Good place to come back to. It's I settled here for a reason.
Yeah.
I wasn't born here, but I settled.
Oh, really? Where are you from?
Goose Bay.
Goose Bay.
Yeah. Military brat. So I was
Right,
plopped
right,
on,
right.
on,
Right. So
on
you've
that
been all
base.
over the place. Yeah.
Right across Canada, right across Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, or if you'd like to support us, please visit Roofhound Brewing Company at 573 Main Street, Kingston, or buy our product wherever it's available, including our Foolishly Optimistic IPA at your local NSLC. Thank you.